In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the upcoming pattern where overall things are warmer through the next few weeks. That's kind of what we've been talking about for a few days now. And really, that continues to be the trend here. And we're going to see that throughout the model runs. But there will be colder times within that overall longer range warmth. And that is where the potential, it's not huge, but there is potential for snowfall lies, especially if you're in the southern areas like Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic. You want to take this with a grain of salt. But for areas like the Great Lakes, upper Midwest, Northern Plains, Northeast, the chances seem relatively optimistic for snowfall. To the south, we do have a couple of severe weather concerns that we're going to go over today as well. Overall storminess will be prevailing. So let's take a look first off at the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook here from the National Weather Service. And what we see is from March 29th through April 2nd, we are going to be dealing with above normal temperatures for much of the south central states into the southeastern states. And you can tell the further south we go, the further above normal it is. You might be thinking, of course, the south is more above normal than the north, but it's above normal for your given location. So for Houston, let's say your average temperature is like, I don't know, 75, 80. You might be looking at 85, something like that. And it takes the averages for every given location. So we expect above normal temperatures throughout these areas and below normal temperatures throughout much of the northern plains, Great Lakes into the northeast. And again, especially if you're in like the kind of middle area, it could really swing either way. Keep that in mind. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the precipitation outlook. And as we take a look here for the March 29th through April 2nd precipitation outlook, we see much of the nation in the above normal category again here, especially along the west here where we're dealing with persistent storms moving onshore. The only real below average area are going to be these lower four corner states and a little bit of Texas. And then for the east, we're leaning above average. Keep in mind that this is still like a 30 to 40% chance, 40 to 50% chance of being above normal. It's not huge, but there should be a pretty active area of precipitation throughout here. Looking at the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook, we see a lot of the same below normal temperatures along the west coast. This is going to be a negative PNA. We can tell this moves up into Alaska. So this is going all the way up the Canadian coastline into Alaska as well. So really a intense positive or negative PNA look here. And this forces the warmth into the central states especially, but also a lot of the east here dealing with these above normal temperatures as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at this precipitation outlook also. And as we take a look at it, we see this drier area has expanded across the south central states. So this is getting a little bit drier. The west here dealing with some above normal precipitation, still pretty well above average. So we expect that storm track to really just continue to hammer this area. Then the east looks a little bit less above normal, still leaning above normal, especially if you're in these northern areas of the east, but not a super high chance of above normal precipitation whatsoever. Looking at the past 20 days, which will be the 3rd through the 23rd of March here, we do see that it has looked very similar to these outlooks, below normal PNA or below normal temperatures, aka negative PNA out west, and a lot of that causing the warmth to move into the central and eastern states. So over the course of the last 5 days of March or so, we're going to expect to see a pattern like this, and into early April as well. The first week of April looks very much so just like this, basically. Let's go ahead and just take a look now at the European model, where we do see interesting storms happening as soon as today. This is this evening, probably around the time you're watching this video, 8 p.m. on Sunday, March 23rd, and that is Eastern. So make sure to, translate that over to your time zone. But we do see some snowfall for a lot of the northern Rockies here up into the Canadian Rockies, some of the Cascades, and rainfall in the lower elevation areas. We do have an impactful low there over southern Wisconsin, and this is causing snowfall for northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, both peninsulas of Michigan. And we do see severe weather and thunderstorms overall happening underneath. So we do have a slight risk of severe weather today, and that's happening throughout Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky, a little bit of Missouri, southern Illinois, into southern Indiana, parts of Ohio. Thunderstorms are happening today and tonight in those areas. As we just take a look at the afternoon of tomorrow on Monday the 24th, we see thunderstorm activity really getting going here along the East Coast. So, especially these southern areas, we do have a chance of thunderstorms and severe weather, but it's mostly as you move north up into here, it's mostly showery. We actually do still continue to see snowfall over the Great Lakes and parts of the Northeast here, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, seeing a snow system for tomorrow. Looking at Tuesday afternoon there on the 25th, we see a much drier pattern, but very much so different than what we saw on those outlooks. Look at this positive PNA, warmth over the west. This causes cold to dive into the kind of Great Lakes, upper Midwest, and into the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. It's these little snippets of cold that are going to bring snowfall chances to these areas. So keep that in mind. Again, the overall pattern is warmth, but that doesn't mean every single day is going to be warm in there. There is colder times. And by Wednesday, we're still cold. I mean, this is still relatively cold. We even get snow showers perhaps on Wednesday morning along areas of West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, into New Jersey and New York there. So some snow showers happening here, indicative of the temperatures we're dealing with. Thursday on the 27th, we see that cold is starting to come to an end, and this is really coming due to a colder, more stormy air mass moving over the northwest and western areas of Canada. This is forcing this what basically was a positive PNA to expand eastward. So we're starting to see that warm start to move in by Thursday and a negative PNA develop itself. So we're finally seeing the pattern that the National Weather Service is seeing. By Friday, same thing. It's only basically developed by this point. So that jet stream moves straight on the central west coast there. Warmth really, really prevails here for the Midwest, the plains, then into the southeast and mid-Atlantic areas. Really, the northeast is the only area in the east hanging on to this colder regime. And then that storminess and cold continues for the northwest. Maybe even thunderstorms around for Oklahoma and Texas. That'll be something to look at in the near future. Friday, looking at Saturday on the 29th here, we see that it's basically the same thing, just worsening. So that jet stream continues to be a trough in the west, ridge in the east. We see this low developing nearby Oklahoma and Kansas. It develops a warm front. There is also a cold front in here as well. And we see a thick pocket of thunderstorms and maybe even severe weather here for states like Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and probably moving into Tennessee, Illinois, and Kentucky eventually as well. So maybe a stormy day there on Thursday with concerns for severe weather. Sunday afternoon, maybe it's a 2-day event, 994 here over northern Illinois. And we see thunderstorm activity for the deeper south, like the Texas coast, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, western North Carolina, the Florida Panhandle. So a classic kind of plains and then deep south 2-day severe weather event. This is very, very classic stuff and similar to some of those storms that we saw earlier in March. As we keep going towards Monday afternoon here on the 31st of March, we see that low moves up into eastern Canada. Thunderstorms really, really looking likely, perhaps, for these areas in the southeast and mid-Atlantic. Probably showers again as we move further north towards that low. And then a lot of snowfall there in eastern Canada from that stronger low as well. Meanwhile, we see this storminess just continue for the west. All three mountain ranges out there in the west seeing major snowfall, and rainfall is a big factor for the lower elevation areas. So a pretty impactful overall pattern. Tuesday on the 1st of April, this is what we're dealing with. Still quite warm in the east. We get this kind of like double dipping trough look. So still the northeast somehow is holding on to that cold. Overall warmth for the plains really, really thriving. In the southeast and mid-Atlantic, a little less warm than the plains, but still relatively warm by that Tuesday, April 1st timeframe. And the storminess continues out west. That's going to be really a big trend here. Wednesday, the 2nd of April, storminess continues in the west. We do have pockets of perhaps isolated or scattered thunderstorms here. The bigger picture here is that we're still dealing with this major trough in the west and a major ridge in the central and even eastern states here. Looking towards Thursday, on April 3rd, a lot of the same still. I mean, storminess in the west, ridge in the east. Doesn't really break up too much. Potential for thunderstorms here in the deeper south areas. Showery activity across the Great Lakes. Nothing too crazy here. Friday on the 4th, same thing. I don't even want to really break it down at this point. Saturday is when things get kind of interesting because we have a 989 perhaps developing here between Minnesota and Iowa. It's a good time to remind you that we are beyond 10 days here with what we're looking at. So take it with a grain of salt, but this model is trending at a storm there in the kind of like northern central area of the United States is a good way to look at it. And this would bring thunderstorm chances, especially to the south and east of it. So we'll see if that develops here on this model. Not really. Maybe for the upper Midwest and Great Lakes, a little bit of thunderstorm activity. And then we're left with still a warm pattern in the east with potential for showers or thunderstorms across parts of the plains, Midwest, Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and even the Northeast there. Looking at the GFS model, we're going to see a lot of differences, primarily a couple of snow threats. So again, the Northeast gets a pretty big one here, kind of like this tomorrow evening, perhaps. As we keep going, stays a little cooler throughout the model run. A big Midwest snowstorm there right around the 30th and 31st of this month, March. And then this is when things get crazy different. Wednesday, the 2nd of April, a big time nor'easter develops in the Gulf and moves off the southeast coast and starts to bring snowfall as far south as Virginia and North Carolina, but also for West Virginia, Maryland, D.C., New Jersey, northern Delaware, areas like that. And that moves along that whole mid-Atlantic territory into New Jersey, into Pennsylvania, and then up into New York and southern New England. That one eventually moves out. And we stay kind of colder here. I mean, look at this. We get another system. This one's inland, but we have a trough around it. So your jet stream is right here. And this one's probably going to want to show snowfall too here around April 7th, April 8th. Yeah, look at that for the areas like Pennsylvania and then the rest of the Northeast here seeing some higher elevation snowfall. So this model says, hey, winter is not done and it's not going to be done for quite a while. The precipitation overall, the West continues to thrive. We have seen the models back off on a lot of our precipitation here, especially for the South Central, Deep South, Southeast, and Mid-Atlantic areas. I would say the Midwest and Ohio Valley and Great Lakes and Northeast still do quite well. So let's look at the anomalies. And yeah, I mean, above average here in like the northern, eastern, and central areas. And then also for a lot of the West with a pretty big below normal area here across the Deep South, Southeast, Mid-Atlantic area, like I mentioned. Don't be surprised if this changes. We've seen this model want to fluctuate with a lot of this. So hopefully this isn't what happens. I'm hoping for precipitation overall, but we'll see what happens. Total snowfall on the European model obviously going to be much more marginal in the eastern half of the nation. Really only the Great Lakes and Northeast dealing with some snowfall. Although the mountainous west just gets hammered. GFS model is a lot more optimistic the further east you go, and a lot less optimistic for the western mountain ranges. I mean, still feet, and especially in the northern mountains, but the Sierra Nevadas and Southern Rockies, this is pathetic, really. Looking at the northern plains, upper Midwest into the Great Lakes, plowable snowfall in these areas, and also a mid-Atlantic and southern New England special here, with maybe upwards of 8, 9, 10 inches of snowfall on this model. Take it with a grain of salt. Seriously, this model's been jumping around and doing crazy stuff and, you know, showing these snowstorms in early April. We're still a ways away. I'm very skeptical if we're going to see that snow event, especially in the south, like Virginia, North Carolina, Maryland, Delaware, those areas, but we shall see what happens. Let's quickly take a look at the Storm Prediction Center outlooks here. We see the day one outlook for today. Like I mentioned, we do have a slight risk, but let's break it down by category. And starting out with the lighter green there, that's where we have our general thunderstorm risk, where general thunderstorms are expected, but severe weather isn't necessarily expected, but still heed every watch, warning, and advisory because sometimes severe weather does happen outside of the areas where it's expected. Level 1 marginal risk in that darker green is where we do expect isolated severe weather to occur, and then the yellow area is your level 2 slight risk, where we expect a little bit more scattered about severe weather to occur. Looking towards tomorrow for the day 2 outlook, we do see, like I said, some thunderstorm risk here, especially in the southeast and along the Gulf Coast. The general thunderstorm risk in the lighter greens, and we do have a marginal risk for coastal Louisiana, coastal Mississippi, coastal Alabama, the Florida Panhandle, and a bit of southwestern Georgia. Now, as we move towards day 3, we get a little bit quieter. 3 general thunderstorm risk areas in the lighter greens, and that's about it. We don't have any extended outlooks as of now, but I do see some pretty big chances for severe weather, 5, 6, 7, 8 days away from now. So I think that we're going to be seeing some bigger outlooks coming up in just a few days. With all that being said, be sure to subscribe. We upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload, so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.